Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans number 33. I'm Fred Green. This is one of those episodes that falls into its own unique category of game improvement. I'm honored once again to feature this conversation with Michael Murphy, author of Golf in the Kingdom. We talk about the book, the many failed attempts to translate it into a movie, and his approach to golf. Golf in the Kingdom is probably the most popular golf novel in history, selling over 1 million copies and translated into 19 languages. If you haven't read it, read it. Golf in the Kingdom tells the story of a young traveler named Michael Murphy, while in Scotland, accidentally stumbles upon a mystical golfing expert, Shivas Irons, who over a 24-hour period teaches him about golf and spirituality. Now, if you've been bitten by the GITK or the kingdom, or are fascinated about that cross-section of golf and Zen and meditation, there's a wonderful nonprofit organization, the Shivas Irons Society at shivas.org, S-H-I-V-A-S, that grew from the devotion to this book. Well, when I found out they were having a meeting locally, I attended just to meet Michael. It was there that I was able to secure this interview. And we're going to do it in 2 parts. Golf Smarter Mulligans is supported by two guys with golfballs.com, the place to get quality used golf balls at an unbelievably low price. And when you use the checkout code GolfSmarter, you're going to get 10% off every order. What ball do you play? Do you play the Callaway? Titleist? Everyone's got Titleist, and they have a lot of different lines of Titleist. What about Srixon, do you prefer? Top Flight? Well, whatever it is that you like, you're going to find it at twoguyswithgolfballs.com in 3 different levels of quality. You'll have the par, birdie, and eagle. Par, you can play those when you're using practice rounds and you don't care if you lose a ball. But if you like the feel and look of a brand new golf ball, well, then you get the eagle quality, and you're going to pay around half the price of a brand new ball. It just makes sense. I don't care how much money you have. It just makes sense to buy these used golf balls from twoguyswithgolfballs.com. And that discount offer expires April 1, 2020. Mulligans is also brought to you by AutoSlash.com. AutoSlash.com is the rental car booking service that's going to save you money, hassle, and a lot of time. AutoSlash.com applies every available coupon code to your next car rental, including coupons you're eligible for based on your various memberships or frequent flyer programs, and then they track your reservation until the day you pick up the car, and they email you when they find a better rate. The average user saves 30% off from any other booking site. And Autoslash.com is completely free. So bookmark it now on your browser and use it the next time you go to rent a car. Autoslash.com, AutoSlash, Autoslash.com. Welcome, Michael.
Well, good to be with you, Fred.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is really a special moment for us. For the uninitiated, which if you're a golfer and you haven't read this book, I can't imagine why not, and you're going to have to. Give us an overview of what Golf in the Kingdom is about.
Well, it's an Irish tall tale. It's a metaphysical comedy. It's about the mysticism of the game. It tells of one Michael Murphy, with some resemblance to the author, who is on his way to India, to an Indian ashram, in search of spiritual transformation. And he stops off at the great and fabled course of Burning Bush for a round of golf, and there meets Shivas Irons, who is a wizard, a Celtic shaman, and they play a round of golf that changes Murphy's life, and then joins a rousing dinner party in which the game is explored from various angles, and then they go out into this ravine at night looking for Shivas Irons' teacher. And then they end up in Shivas Irons' apartment, where he goes into ecstatic trance. And the very things that Murphy is going to look for in India are right there in front of him, but on a golf course. And that's too much for Murphy, and so he heads on for India and turns away from the very thing for which he's looking. That's the story.
Fascinating. Okay, so there's some similarities to the Michael Murphy who wrote the book as the character.
Yes, there are. The book is filled with things that have actually happened. There is a second part to the book, a kind of afterword, a part 2, which is filled with a variety of reflections. So the book, in a way, is a travel story, a mystical novel, a metaphysical comedy, and a doorway into this mystical underground of sport. And, you know, the book's been out there 34 years. It was published in 72, and it has sold more copies now than any other fiction ever written about the game of golf. You know, more than 1 million copies in 9 languages.
Congratulations.
And it's, inspired the formation of the Shivas Irons Society, which people can join, that has members in all 50 states and in 25 countries. So it's had this huge life, which I never anticipated when I wrote it. It's the first book I wrote, and it's the most popular of all my books. Most of all, it opened up a doorway for me into what I've been studying all my life, namely the mystical side of our ordinary life and the possibilities that keep opening to us of amazing new adventures and transformations. But that we turn away from. So it's an ironic story about turning away from the very things that appear to us mysteriously in our lives.
So why do you think your book was so successful?
I don't know. I think it's got a variety of charms. You know, some people read it when they're going to go to Scotland. Other people read it as a spiritual text. Some people read it as a way to improve the mental side of performance. It's had quite an influence on a lot of players, including a lot of professionals. And it has this following among sports psychologists. Because the book came out in 72, the term the zone hadn't been coined yet.
Mm.
And I have another book called In the Zone, which is a collection of these supernormal experiences that occur through sport. Because sport does indeed, have a lot of similarities to a yoga or a martial art when it's passionately pursued. Any sport does. Because it requires, if you give yourself to it, it requires a tremendous commitment of body and soul and a coordination of your mind with your performance. So in any case, a lot of people buy it as a kind of a text, a training manual for the mind and body. And other people get it just for its fun and entertaining. So there are different reasons why people buy it.
And then you also wrote a sequel.
Yes. It came out 25 years later. The Kingdom of Shivas Irons. The central character in the book is named Shivas Irons. And Murphy, in the second book, goes looking again for Shivas Irons and doesn't find him, but has another series of adventures that color and amplify his previous experiences.
Were you pushed into writing that sequel, or did it just evolve out of you? Or
well, it's this whole subject keeps evolving. I've written a prequel too, but it's not published. I don't think I will publish it. I think it's too far out. It's it would be too far ahead of the curve. It's really so it's when you give birth to something like this, to a world, it often wants to keep growing. So that second book, it grew out of the first book, and it describes a lot of experiences that I and other people have had that are related to the first book. For example, my meeting John Brody, who used to play quarterback for the 49ers, which did happen to me in 1972. And Brody asked me to come to the 49er training camp, and I had been a long-time season ticket holder and rabid fan of the 49ers, and he was this great quarterback. And it was an offer I couldn't refuse to go to this summer camp. And his thought was to write a book with him maybe about all of these dimensions in football, because he had experienced these things in football. And that, in turn, led me into world after world of sport, where this, I call it this mystical underground, exists, where people, where sports people, because of the sport, grow into these altered states of mind and, let's call them in-the-zone type experiences, inadvertently enter into the realm where mystics and shamans want to go. But they do it, many of them, without a context, without a philosophy, without a psychology, without understanding what's going on, but in the service of the sport, either for improving their performance or their enjoyment. So that is described, that encounter with Brody is described in the second book, and 8 or 10 other such experiences. So it's a roman à clef, that is a novel about real events, but it's fictional, the second book, as was the first book. But both of them are based on real experiences.
You talk about writing with Brody, what a great opportunity you had, especially in being a 49er fan. And it's interesting that literature and sports seem to work best in not that many sports. I mean, you don't get a lot of romantic literature that involves football, but you do when it comes to baseball, boxing, and golf. And as somebody once said to me...
George Plimpton famously said, the smaller the ball, the better the literature. And he's got a point. I mean, golf does arguably has the richest literature of any sport. But then baseball has a wonderful literature, not as large as golf, and then football, not as much.
Right. So why did you select golf? Was it just happened to be that way, or you knew that?
I tell you, it's a mystery to me.
Interesting. It chose you.
Norman Mailer, once said that God gives every hardworking or aspiring writer one free one. Well, that was my free one.
That was your free drop.
It was my first book, not only that I wrote, but that I tried to write. And I had the idea for some years prior, but somehow it was just there for me to do, and it was very successful.
And what is your relationship with as a golfer? I mean,
well, I don't. I'm 75 now.
Okay.
I was 39 when I sat down to it, and I finished the book when I was 40. It was published when I was 41, 34 years ago. I'm 75 now. I used to be a good golfer, but now I don't count my score anymore when I play. I just count how many pars or birdies I get on a round, And also I, about the time I started to write, I took up running. I was in my 40s, and started not only for health, but started to compete. All this seniors track and field, and I got good at it, and came in third in the national championships for the 50 and over. Running I ran a 1500 meter in 4:32 when I was 53. So I was working out all the time and loving this running, and that has persisted, and it took away my golf. And, I got into the lifting weights and the whole thing. And so, I don't know, golf kind of went away.
Well, it's interesting. In the second book, or in The Kingdom of Shivas Irons, you have a line there that you talk about the regenerative power in its plain repetitions and about practice. And it seems to me that it's not a mystery to me that you'd start running if you had a love of golf. I would think that running, swimming, and golf, that there is a monotony to it. It can be in the practice of it that you can get.
Yeah. That's very astute.
Thank you.
That's very true. In this book, this other book of mine, In the Zone, I have I attempt an analysis of what it is in sport that resembles the contemplative and shamanic and yogic traditions. And one of them is sustained, purposeful activity that requires a special sense of sacrifice. You have to really discipline yourself. And then many graces are given from this. It also they both require a lot of detachment from your ordinary stuff that comes up in you, in your mind. You watch Tiger Woods. Even if he loses his temper for a moment, this extraordinary elasticity, he just comes right back. He will not quit. And what he comes back to is this incredible composure. And he's been playing all the time, all his life, since whenever Earl, his father, started him around 2 years old, and it's become his life. So that detachment from stuff that comes up in your mind, that dedication, the requirement that you develop a large number of skills. Now, let's take either golf or running. It's not that you just learn one thing, a golf swing or a running stride. Those, in turn, require 8 or 10 basic components of physical activity: elasticity, balance, coordination, focus, power, etc. And each of those, in turn, trigger this flooding of the nervous system with these neuropeptides. More and more they're understanding this. And those neuropeptides, in turn, produce these wonderful variations and elevations of mood. Among us runners, when I started in the 70s, they had just discovered endorphin. But now, it turns out, there are 80 or 90 major classes of these neuropeptides. Endorphins is one kind, but there are all sorts of things that are produced by the variety of physical exercise. That's why, that kind of glow that athletes have, if they're not, too ginned up with steroids and if they don't drink too much or whatever else. But, the glow produced by athletics resembles the glow produced by contemplative or yogic practice. I think science is more and more understanding these amazing cocktails we mix and send straight into our bloodstream when we're exercising creatively. And it seems as if the human race is designed for creative physical activity. It's as if we're here to be bodies. And all of this writing of mine, because half my books are nonfiction, arise out of a philosophy that I have that holds that the universe is evolving in the course of time to disclose more and more of its latent divinity. And we are all, in us, God is waking up, so to speak, speaking metaphorically. There's more, the human potential is far greater, it seems, than we can imagine right now. And we get glimpses of this through these sorts of activities. That, I think, actually is the real reason for the book's Golf in the Kingdom's popularity, is that it talks about this in a playful way. But it also, my nonfiction books make the case, with thousands of footnotes and so forth, because there's a lot of science now turning to this human potential and to this extraordinary disclosures that come through these creative practices, whether they're, as as religious as going away to some Buddhist retreat, or as mundane as playing golf with all your heart. And so,
I loved another one of your lines that you said that golf is an exercise of imagination with hands.
Yes.
That was beautiful. And you talked just now about exercise creatively.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, that line of mine was influenced by Coleridge, the poet, who differentiated imagination, which has hands, from mere fantasies. If you imagine something very powerfully, say the way Einstein did in his famous thought experiments, out of that came the atomic bomb, relativity theory, etc. So a great poet who feels a character deeply, out comes Hamlet or Falstaff, like Shakespeare. So it happens on golf courses. And, those of us who are cultural snobs think, oh, how can these golfers, how can you compare them to Coleridge? Well, it happens. And I like to say I'm the person who really had to tell the world that golf is really a history school for Republicans. There they are, having these peak experiences all over the place. Even the Democrats that play, the 10% are the Democrats, but they, anyway.